Hey everyone, Mac Gardner here, author of Motivate Your Money. I am joined today by the one, the only Larry Sprung. Larry, so good to see you, brother.
Yeah, same here, Mac. Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
For sure, for sure. Now, Larry, part of this project that we're putting together is to interview thought leaders, folks that are in the wealth management, financial planning space that are really doing amazing things. And I said, you know what? Larry's written books. Larry's done all these things. Let me bend Larry's ear and hear what his top three are. So, Larry, before we jump into that, could you give our audience a little bit about who Mr. Laurence Sprung is?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you. And I'm very grateful to even be considered a thought leader in this profession because I would never have thought that 20 something years ago. So I appreciate that.
For sure.
Who I am, first and foremost, I'm a husband to Denise of 23 years, a father to Jeremy and Zach, who are my 17 now and 20-year-old. And I am a family guy, first and foremost. I am a hockey guy through and through, love the sport. Both my boys play, and I love watching them and playing. And I also happen to be in wealth management, and my firm is Mitlin Financial. I established it in 2004, and we work with individuals and help them become and remain financially independent and find their freedom, whatever that means to them. So it's been an exciting profession to be in, and it's very rewarding to work with families every day and have the opportunity to serve them and hopefully the next generation and even the generation after that. And it's been a very rewarding career for sure.
And I can tell just from how you introduced yourself, Larry, that you know your stuff. So this is going to be a good one. Now, I love the fact that you say your family first. I think as advisors, as financial planners, that's the core of what we do, right? We help families and we help people navigate financial waters that they probably never really knew they had to deal with or weren't really prepared to deal with. So I thank you for everything that you do. So I have always believed that there's a top three for everything. All right, Larry, there's a top three for sodas, there's a top three for cereals, there's a top three for cars. So the thought process is as an advisor, as a person that people turn to when it comes to managing their personal finance, what would your top three motivational money messages be? So think about that a little bit. And then if you want, you can give them all three, or you can start with one and move through. But what would your top three motivational money messages be, Larry?
Yeah, so I think that's really simple. I mean, it's something that we wrote about in our most recent book, Financial Planning Made Personal. There are a lot of great ideas and great concepts in there, but I think the top three, if I had to earmark them, one is finding joy and finding your why. I
Mm,
think that's number one. Number two is pay yourself first. And number three is start early. And I think a lot of times, if you do those three things, they could be tremendously beneficial. So I could go into each one of those with
Oh
a
no,
little more
we're going
detail if
into
you'd
each
like.
one of these, but
Okay, all right,
so
great.
let's
So,
start with number
so
one. I like number one. Why? Talk about that a little bit.
yeah, so I think you hear about it all the time, right? Simon Sinek, especially with
Hmm.
business owners and entrepreneurs, talks about finding your why. But that's also really relevant to finding your why with regard to financial planning and ultimately finding your why that's going to create joy in your life.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times people are turned off. They're scared about doing financial planning or looking at these numbers because they feel it's so number oriented and it becomes overwhelming.
And
So if
intimidating, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So if you sit down first and start figuring out, why am I looking to put this money away?
Mhm.
Why am I looking to plan? And a lot of times the end result is some joyful event. For example, right? If you have children
Mhm.
and eventually you're planning to send them or wishing or hoping that they go to college someday. It's not about the hassle of putting that money away and figuring out how much you need to pay for that college. It should be focused on the joy of thinking about the why and watching your son, daughter, child walking across and receiving their diploma. And
Mhm.
if you start thinking in terms of that, it becomes less of a job, less work, less intimidating, and more of a joyful experience, which means you're going to actually do it,
Do it.
follow it, and follow through and make sure you stay on path. So I think that that is a hugely, beneficial, and that's why I put it at top, at number one.
Yeah. So when I my first book is called Motivate Your Money, which is what this whole platform is based on. But when I sit down with younger advisors that are coming into the business and they're looking for coaching, I talk about the three F's of the financial planning engagement. Too many times when folks sit down, the first thing they start talking about is money. They start talking about the finance. And Larry, I've been known to literally nudge advisors under the table when that's the first thing that comes up to say that.
Right,
The three F's, the first F you should always start the conversation is family.
right.
Majority of times, the reason why we're doing the stuff that we're doing with our money is to take care of family. So start off with family, ask about the kids, ask about the spouse, ask about the parents, ask about all these things. Get to know who these people are. People don't care how much you know, so they know how much you care. Then you can get into finances, or I would say future would come next. Okay, what do you want the future to be? How do you envision what goals you want? And then you get to finances. So I love the why. And a lot of times the why is family. That's what's
Mhm.
driving a lot of these financial decisions. So, all right, I love it. Understand the why. Point two, talk to me about that one.
Pay yourself first.
Yeah.
I think that this is, very important. And I think a lot of folks get away from this. And, it's not a concept that I created. I think, it comes from The Richest Man in Babylon. It really
Awesome
drives
book.
home that, yeah, awesome book. It really drives home the whole point that, we shouldn't be working for the bills and then looking at what's left over after
Mhm.
we pay everybody else.
Mhm.
Because I would argue we're the most important people in our own lives. So
Can't
why
take care of
not take
yourself.
care?
Can't take anybody else.
There you go. So I want to flip that whole concept on its head and instead figure out what's a comfortable number that you should be putting away on a regular basis. And this, keep in mind, when we say this, it doesn't mean that it has to all go into a retirement account
Mhm.
that may not be able to be touched for 15, 20, 30
Mhm.
plus years.
Mhm.
It's paying yourself first in a way that some of that money may be going to your retirement plan. Some of that money may be going to savings or an
Mhm.
emergency fund or college education. The first thing, though, is to figure out how much you're going to pay yourself first. And if that number is 10%, and
Mhm.
in The Richest Man in Babylon, it talks a lot about that
Yep.
10% number.
Mhm.
And if you can do that, then figure out how to live on the other 90% and pay your bills. And it amazes me when I have these conversations with people who at first don't think they can do that. And the
Mhm.
reality is we have the ability to really morph
Mhm.
into whatever
Whatever budget.
situation we
Yeah.
want to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, how many people they get a raise and then all of a sudden they realize that they don't have that money to put away because they've
Lifestyle creep.
there you
Lifestyle
go.
creep. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So creep it to yourself,
Yeah. Oh, oh,
allocate
that one's getting cut.
allocate
That one's getting cut. We're using that one. Creep it to yourself.
allocate 10%. And then if you get a raise, if you get a 5% raise, raise the 10%. So
Yeah.
you're at least utilizing that creep to go into your savings account. And, we're the most important people in our own lives, and we should be thinking about us and our families first. Pay yourself first, and then use the rest to allocate to those bills and those other responsibilities. And you'll be surprised how you'll adapt and adjust to that.
I knew this was going to be a strong interview, Larry. I did. I knew it was going to be good. All right. So, you know, understand the why, pay yourself first. I agree 1,000% with both of those. Let's talk about this third one because this third one is a personal one for me too. So talk about this, the third point, please.
Yeah, starting early.
Mhm.
I think what we find again in many cases, if you go the route of going to high school and then going to college, or you go to trade school, whatever the case may be, when you're done with high school or even before that, you know, we think that we don't have enough money, we're
Mhm.
not making enough money to save. We'll punt that to later on when I'm making more money. Then
Mhm.
I'll start saving.
It's
The
like,
problem
no.
is the problem is you lose two things.
Yeah.
One is that you're losing the time value of that money
Mhm.
and compounding
Mhm.
effect, right? If you start saving at 18 And then, or if you wait till 28, that 10 years, you could have had that money that you put away at 18 growing for you. So
Exactly.
you could lose that. The second thing is that we forget when we're young that when we're earning more money, the chances are we're also going to have a lot more responsibilities, right?
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
hopefully maybe you own a house at that point.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a significant other. Maybe you
Hmm.
have kids at that point.
Hmm.
Well, you're going to need that money to support them and pay those bills. So you may not be in a better position.
Yeah.
So I would argue find the why,
Hmm.
pay yourself first early, and
Hmm.
start, investing early,
Yeah.
because it'll be hugely beneficial to you long term. There was a graph in my book that basically showed somebody at the age of like 20 putting $1,000 a year away, incrementally increasing it by $200 a year
Hmm.
for about 20 years.
Hmm.
They accumulated about $2 million by
Yep.
the time they were 65 versus starting at 45,
45. Yep.
putting $6,000 away,
Hmm.
increasing it by $1,000 a year for 20 years, and you end up with like 8 or 900,000. It's a significant difference. So
Your
they're
money
huge.
can work harder for you than you can work for your money.
hun-
Yeah.
100%. So you
Mm.
have to start early. I've instilled this, and I know you're a big proponent of this through your money bears.
Mm-hmm.
My kids have had Roth IRAs since the age of 14.
Yep.
And they're going to be in a pretty good spot when and
Yeah.
if they're looking to retire or buy a house or whatever that may
Anything.
be, because of
Anything.
that
Yeah.
compounding effect.
It's funny. I love when you talk about those two factors that folks don't look at when starting off young. I joke around when you're young, you have bills, right? A car, rent. When you get older, you have Williams. You have to call them by their full name because they're grown. You've got
Right.
mortgage, you have school, you have all of those things. And so, in my mind, Larry, the biggest benefit of starting early is allowing your money to work for you and having that runway. And I talk about the four money bears starting the conversation about money, having the conversation about investing and the concept of investing and ownership of things at age 7. So if you can
Mhm.
imagine having a child that's in elementary, middle school, and having the technology to be able to buy fractional shares and buy $5 worth of Nike, $5 worth of Coca-Cola, $5 worth of whatever, how much time that young person has to allow their money to work for them. So, Larry, your book is awesome. The work you do is awesome. Do us a favor, please. Can you give us a recap of your top 3 motivational money messages?
Yeah. So the top three that I feel will put you on a path for success are know your why and find your joy in the process of knowing your why. Number two is pay yourself first. We're the most important person in our own lives, our family and us. And number three, start early. Even if you don't think you can, you definitely can, and start.
Awesome. Larry, thank you so much for carving a bit of your time out of your day. Your clients, your family are blessed to have you in their lives. I like to say that the financial life journey is a long one. It's full of ups, it's full of downs. And so having a guide on that path is extremely important. And whatever motivates you motivates your money. Journey continues.